Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sanderlanche podcast. This week we are covering Mistborn, The Final Empire, chapters 8 and 9. That's right, I got it the first try with no problems at all this time.
Nice.
Yeah, and so in these chapters, we meet a Mistwraith, finally. We meet a Terrismen, and then in chapter 9, we kind of skip over what I feel like would be first the Rocky training montage and then like Vin's My Fair Lady montage. That's how I picture what happens in that chapter. So hang on to something, everybody. The Sanderlanche is about to begin.
My revolution carries me in a moment lost in time. My revolution sets me free. I will flow across the lines. Bring them to brother in me.
So, thanks everybody. I am Data, and with me is
Jack.
Jamie.
And I'm Joe.
I'm glad that y'all sorted that out. Usually we establish what order we'll go in so there's no confusion beforehand. But see, you guys managed it perfectly. We're all good.
Oh, we forgot to do that.
Yep, I was thinking the same thing, but you guys pulled it out. Way to go. So what did you guys think of these two chapters overall?
Pretty cool. They're a bit shorter than the last couple, which was nice. But we're beginning to see a bit more about the world, and the plan is finally beginning to take shape. I was not prepared for the time jump in between the two chapters. I didn't realize we'd come to the end of part 1.
Yeah, it is a little bit unexpected. Although we talked about last time the possibility that there might be a time jump, but I don't think anyone seriously thought it would happen.
At least it wasn't a year, and it's like, so the army's all done.
Let's get cracking, team.
I really liked that there was that moment between Kelsier and Vin with the, like, if you can't trust me, you're not on my crew. We can't do this. This isn't going to work. So I really enjoyed that moment.
Yeah, that's something that we've been worried about for a bit here, that her lack of trust was going to cause some problems. So I guess they called it out at least.
I guess they had to at some point. Like, it's just been going on for so long.
Well, the whole, what is it now? They actually started meeting each other in like chapter 3 or something. So, and this was chapter 8. So yeah, I guess that's 4 chapters. 5. I can count. Who says I can't? Joe, you took a breath like you were going to say something, and then you didn't say anything.
So these chapters were good. I liked that the 8th chapter picked up right where the 7th chapter left off, which makes sense with how the 7th chapter ended. I did like that we got to see kind of what a Mistwraith is. I feel like there's probably some more there than maybe Kelsier explained to her that we don't know about them yet. And I liked the Terrismen a lot. I thought he was really cool. And I'm not a big fan of time skips like that because they say it's basically 2 months. But I understand the need for it. They're trying to kind of get us into the good parts of the story. So I guess that's why the author chose to do that, Mr. Sanderson.
So you think there's something more like sinister than what he's explaining happening with the Mistwraiths? Because he seems, when he talks about it, he's kind of like, they're just whatever.
Yeah, well, it's like it almost, and maybe there's nothing, and I don't know that it's necessarily a sinister thing. It's just, I felt like, oh, that was it, huh? It's like, it makes me think of a slime in Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, nope, that's pretty much just what it is. It's a big giant thing that sucks things up.
He did make a point that this one was quite young. So maybe as they get older, they can expel more parts that they don't need. Maybe they become a bit more skilled, a bit more terrifying, even though they don't necessarily go out of their way and hurt people. But, this one's just quite young.
Like, there's always these assumptions that anything that has to happen happens for a reason. And it's like, so people are terrified of Mistwraiths. There's got to be some reason for that beyond just they're the things out there just kind of hanging around. Like, there's got to be a reason people are scared of them.
To be perfectly honest, even if nothing else happens, if I lived in a world where this thing exists, I would be terrified of it too.
It's not the most comforting, because even after Vin finds out all about them, she's like, well, I still don't like them. Why doesn't someone kill them?
Yeah,
okay, fair point.
They're so aesthetically displeasing that I think people would just be terrified by that alone. It's like, just imagine a thing with a ton of different heads on it and a ton of different limbs on it, and it just kind of lumbers towards you, and it's translucent, and you can see its bones. I mean, that just sounds awful.
You could have stopped at a ton of different heads, and I think it's already like, oh, okay.
It's just
the
a walking
hands
mass
and
of
the
spare
hooves
parts.
and
It's fine.
Well, and apparently they follow people if you're roaming around because they have a good sense of smell, so they're like, hey, they might drop some food for me.
Yeah, see, they're basically just big, fleshy, malformed raccoons.
Raccoons are assholes.
I think I'd rather have the raccoon.
I don't know, maybe you could train a Mistwraith. I don't know if anyone's ever tried, like, get a pet. And then you can give it whatever kind of bones you want it to look like.
Yeah, we talked about that, right? How we think maybe the Lord Renault guy is actually a Mistwraith.
Maybe he's absorbed the body of Lord Renault and expelled everything else that he doesn't want.
Right, so maybe he's like a really old, intelligent one.
Which that is terrifying.
Big jump in intelligence between, like, blob, blob, blob going along the ground and this guy who is super sophisticated. That is...
Well, maybe it's been around
a hell of a difference.
Since, like, the mists have been around, so that's how old and wise it is. It's just been around for 1,000 years.
Yeah, you know, like they got all these spare parts and they probably practice a whole lot playing shadow puppets with each other. Maybe he's just refined the art.
Okay. I guess we'll have to see about that. So this, we'll just jump into the beginning here. This epigraph is kind of a departure from the other ones, which have really sounded like a journal entry, whereas this one is, he shall defend their ways, yet shall violate them. He will be their savior, yet they shall call him heretic. He shall be discord, capitalized, yet they shall love him for it. And so that one is kind of out of place with what we've read so far, and I don't know if that stuck out to anyone else.
That seems like a creed of some kind, or like an oath.
It
sort of made me think of like the Dark Knight. It's like, you know you got to endure. Everyone are going to hate you for it, but that makes you do the right choices that no one else can. Sort of speech.
It totally sounds like that now that you say that, like the end of the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
He's not the hero that we deserve. or wait, is he the hero that... He is the hero that they deserve, but he's not the one that they need. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
The
The epigraphs are just getting shorter and shorter.
I've got a theory about...
the one for 9 is very short.
Yeah, I've got a theory about the epigraphs, but I guess I'll save that for the theory section.
Okay. And like Joe said, we jump right back into where we left off. Or was that Joe? Whoever said that. And because really, how could we not jump right back into where we left off when Vin shoots into the air? We
2
have
months
to see
later.
Yeah, that would be really mean. So she's terrified and just hanging in midair, and Kelsier's like, yeah, it's a nice view from up here. And she's like, help, get me down. And he gives her a whole speech about how, it's actually... balancing's easy even with just one anchor, because what you've learned from the time you were walking transfers over to Allomancy, which
that was a nice little touch.
Yeah, good to know. Not helpful to her when she's panicking at the top of her push limit.
Yeah, that might have been useful information beforehand.
Let's see. And he makes a joke about her being afraid of heights because he just wants to be a jerk right now while she's hanging here panicking. And I like that she throws in some British cursing where she's like, I'm not used to hanging 100 feet above the bloody street.
Is Sanderson British? This is something I should probably know by now.
He is from Utah in the U.S. That's I was telling Joe before the podcast even started that when looking at our numbers, like Texas, where he and I are from, is one of the highest states where we get downloads from, but Utah is like right there with it. And I was like, maybe that has something to do with it. People live there like him. But now that we're talking about it, the language in the books, and he's talked about pronunciation of characters' names, and like a lot of people, a lot of fantasy authors, he's like, however you want to pronounce it is fine, because once you're reading this book, we're kind of creating this world together. Stuff's happening in your head, so you could pronounce stuff however you want. But apparently, in the Final Empire, the language and names and things have sort of a French slant or origin. He says in one interview that Kelsier is the way that even he pronounces it, but in universe they pronounce it more French. It's like Kelsier, or however they would say that in French.
I like he doesn't even pronounce it the way
he doesn't pronounce it quote unquote correctly, and that was part of his whole thing about like you can pronounce it however you want. That's what I do.
Yeah,
the ultimate you do you move.
Yeah. And so
it's like the whole Voldemort thing, right? J.K. Rowling wanted it to be Voldemort, but because of the gigantic amount of people that pronounced it Voldemort, it became Voldemort.
Well, clearly she was just wrong.
Yeah, she was wrong about her own character, of course.
I remember George R.R. Martin said at one point, like, he doesn't do pronunciation guides for his characters' names, and when like someone pressed Y, he's just sort of like, have you read the books? Have you seen some of the names I've spelled out? I don't know how to pronounce that.
I totally believe that.
Even I don't know how to pronounce it.
George R. R. Martin. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense coming from him. Also, you know, he'd spend like 3 years working on the pronunciation guide, and who needs that at this point?
Well, yeah, but at least he's providing us with semi-regular updates, unlike some other authors who have taken 10 years for a book.
Crumble.
Patrick Rothfuss. Excuse me.
Yeah. Okay. So let's not get started on Patrick Rothfuss, because it's going to take me down a dark road, and then I'll cry later, and it'll be very sad.
What can you do? We're all human, I think.
And so it just makes me appreciate even more, like we've talked about previously, this guy that like writes books regularly, that his books I really enjoy, and that he's even like he's got progress bars on his website, and once a year he does this State of the Sanderson update on his website where he says, here's what I did this year, here's kind of what I'm planning to do next year, here's all the different projects that I have in mind for the future and kind of what status they're in. Like, I think this one will be coming up the year after next, this one's going to get kind of put off longer than that, this one I'm still just thinking about and planning for, this movie has been optioned by these people. Like, he goes into detail on the status of everything, so if there's any questions, you know exactly what's going on, and it's just so refreshing.
I can't help but think that if a movie comes out based on any of his series, like the three of us cannot go and see that movie because we might not be up to where it gets to.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
you'll have to go in for us and vet it for us.
I imagine the very first thing, if something actually gets made, maybe a Mistborn movie, in which case we would probably be there, at least if they were going to turn the trilogy of books into at least a trilogy of movies, then the first one would probably be fine. But he actually, I guess the closest thing that came
when it comes out,
right? The closest thing that came to fruition was like a thing that he wrote set on Earth called Legion that was going to get turned into a TV show, and it's about a guy who has like hallucinations. He has like he hallucinates people, but those people are like experts in different subjects, and he uses them to help him like solve things. Which I won't tell you more than that because we may someday read that, but it was
really cool.
About to be made into a TV show, and then they made another TV show called Legion that was
that X-Men
very
one?
similar, and they were like, well, we
Right.
can't make this show now. They just came out with a different show called this, so that never happened. But anywho, let's see, not accustomed to hanging above the bloody street. We know Vin, it's okay. And so he pulls her over and tosses another ingot outside the wall and is like, okay, let's go. And even Vin, the experienced, thief, spent her life traveling around the Final Empire. Even she's like, wait, we're going outside the city at night? Is that really a good idea? But really, from what we see, other than a creepy Mistwraith, they don't really run into anything out there. He explains to her how to get down, basically. And then she's like, I don't really think that this is... He's like, well, you're at the top of the wall now, Vin. Either you jump or you got to explain to the guards why a Mistborn needs to use the stairs. And, of course, he times that right when some guards are approaching.
Because, of course, he did.
Yeah, it's Kelsier. It's drama.
I love the note that Vin says Kelsier smiled in that infuriating way of his. I'm like, he does do that a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
She already has it down that it's infuriating the way he smiles.
And it really, I mean, I think the book specifically mentions really frequently that Kelsier smiles, not only because that's a big part of his character, and he says it right from the beginning when we meet him in the prologue. He's like, I smile because the Lord Ruler thinks he's taken all of happiness or whatever, and I am disinclined to let him. But I think it's also kind of a contrast to the fact that you don't see a lot of other people smiling. The Ska especially are just not happy because their life is crap. And so Kelsier's like the counterpoint to that. Kelsier's always smiling on purpose, basically.
I also get the feeling that Breeze probably has a smirk on his face, just because he's that kind of guy.
Right? I could totally see that. Like, Breeze just constantly smirking about how he's forcing people to get wine for him and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on a much more interesting kind of theme of the book, to me at least, is what I'm picking up on, is like Kelsier, or Kelsier, however you want to pronounce it. He is like, he's trying to take everything back for them, and his mannerisms, his personality, his joviality, he draws people in like a magnet because of that, and that's what makes him, I feel like, an effective and trustworthy crew person. Is like he takes life seriously, but he also thinks the most important thing is for people to be happy and trust one another. So I feel like that's kind of the theme of the book. Is like these people are gathering around him because, just like they say, a smile's infectious. It's like people want to be around happy people. So I feel like that's a big point of Kelsier's character.
I can see that. He's like sort of molded this persona to try and defy the Lord Ruler and bring everyone else in, so they would do likewise.
Guess we'll see if that actually works out for him. So she jumps, because what else is she going to do, right? And it doesn't work out quite right. She is a little off target, and then she kind of panics and pulls the ingot up towards herself as if that's going to help in some way. But Kelsier saves her, and he's like, "You did really well." And she goes, "I nearly died." And he's like, "Yeah, it happens. Everybody does that." And he says that he thinks that you should get into those extreme circumstances early on when someone can watch over you, which I guess makes a sadistic sort of sense.
Another thing that just explains a lot, like the information that he is deliberately withholding is stuff that he knows she's going to mess around with and screw up and potentially get injured by. So that then, all right, you won't learn that lesson the hard way. You'll never make that mistake again.
Yeah, and being this severe on her may even make her more cautious when testing out other stuff, unlike earlier.
Yeah, for sure. I like that he talks about how, or I don't know if it's an inner monologue or if he tells her how his master basically did push him off of something tall the first time.
In a monologue, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
That would go against his confidence.
Right. I almost wish that he had pushed her off. I feel like maybe Brandon Sanderson thought that would be too mean for him to push Vin off the wall, but I feel like maybe he wanted to do that, but he was like, "I'll just say it happened to Kelsier."
He kind of like emotionally does it because like he leaves her with no choice. It's almost as if he pushed her off, because she can let herself be captured by the guards. That's probably worse than death to Vin at this point. So,
but I think too, with Kelsier, he had to be pushed off. Like, she was brave, she went. I think he brings that up, that she's really brave for doing that. I mean, yes, she had no choice in the end, but she did it. It was her decision to go when she went. He didn't have to push her, whereas he was pushed.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's also a part of him trying to build trust with her, because that, I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier. It's like we get to that point where he literally tells her, it's like, at a certain point, you're going to have to trust me. And if you don't, then you can't be on the team.
Which, just makes a lot of sense. You don't want somebody on the team that you can't trust. And he's really working hard, I think, this evening, especially, to build trust with her. He may even be seeing this as like his one chance, basically, to get her to trust him. Okay, then we get a little talk about her earring, which I don't know if anyone remembers that she mentioned earlier as like the one thing that she has left over from her mom. Her mom gave her this earring. And then he talks about how you can't push metal inside somebody's body, which I feel like was just him not premature, like before anyone had the chance to object, like, "Hey, why couldn't you push on metals in someone's stomach?" He's like, "No, I'm gonna call it out. You can't do that."
Exactly the thought I had when I read it as well.
Yeah, I was like, a perfect exposition. There we go.
I know what those nerds are gonna say. I'll get them. So they just start walking out, and he won't tell her where they're going because it's Kelsier, and he loves drama. And then she hears something following them, and it is a Mistwraith, and we kind of gave that a good going over in the beginning, our opinions on this Mistwraith, but it's an interesting thing to have out there, just in the wilderness, chomping on whatever bones it can find, whatever dead things.
I did think I think it was the first episode I was asking about, horses or other beasts of burden as well. And I think it was the first time we got a mention of those, not for the Mistwraith, but it mentions most people travel by, was it most noble and use Scar instead of horses to pull the boats along the towpath. I'm like, okay, so horses are a thing. And then the Mistfiend comes up and it's got all kinds of stuff floating through it. That was
Mistfiend. Like, okay. You got me saying it now.
Where am I getting that word from?
I don't know.
I'm sorry. For some reason, that's in my head. Yes, but it's full of all these parts of other animals. And all right, so there are other general real world animals out there. We just haven't had the occasion to see many of them. That's just answering a question that's been lingering since we started.
Right, and in fact, I mean, it does. I think it says he has a horse's head in there, but it has a horse's head. It also points out bovine hooves, which makes you think that they have cows, and canine haunches, which makes you think that they have dogs. I mean, it could be a different kind of canine and bovine, but those are very kind of human, earth animal words.
Yeah.
They even mentioned a centipede at one point.
It mentions a deer as well.
Yeah, that's right. So it's giving an impression of some very earth animals, despite the fact that the rest of the world does not look very earth-like with the brown plants and stuff that comes up.
It just means animals can live in this ash-covered shit heap of a world.
Yeah, somehow. Yep, there's a horse head sitting beside a deer head, and Kelsier explains, they eat stuff and duplicate the muscle structure they've eaten, and they get to pick which pieces they like. And then she asks if they're intelligent, and he's like, intelligent? No. Not one this young. More instinctual. And I like that he specifically mentions he's never heard of a Mistwraith attacking a full-grown, healthy adult. That's a lot of modifiers to add to this. It's like they don't attack full-grown, healthy, adult humans. Anybody else, maybe.
Yeah, kids,
children or unhealthy people.
The elderly, the ill, yeah.
I don't know that Vin qualifies as an adult, so she should be kind of concerned by this.
Yeah, what is the Mistwraith going to come up? It's like, hey, can I see your ID? Aha, young enough, let's go.
We know that there is an Imperial high road based on that's where they find Sazed in his carriage. So while they do a lot of their traveling by canal boat, they clearly do have carriages and horses that roll those. I don't know how other people pronounce Sazed. I don't even know how in French it would be said, or if maybe the Terris language is different, so Sazed doesn't even fall under that whole French thing. But how are you guys saying that?
I started with Sazed, and then I thought, no, that seems a bit redundant for some reason, and then I started calling him Sazed.
Yeah, both
I
those
thought
make
it
sense.
saved.
Yeah. It does feel a little bit strange when I say it. Sazed, almost like it's an ending of a word without the complete beginning of the word, or something like that. But that's how I've always done it.
Yeah, I think I said, because the first time they say his full name, so I said Sazed, but then they nickname him Sazed, so I'm like, well, is it Sazed then? But
oh, did they? I must have missed that.
Well, yeah,
it's kind of infrequent. Kelsier says it when they first see him. He's like, oh, you know me, Sazed, but it doesn't come up that much. We get a description of what Terrismen are like, with long, flat faces and willowy, tall bodies and stretched out earlobes with a lot of piercings in the ears, and embroidered garments of overlapping V's in different colors. I feel like it gives a very vivid description of Sazed.
Yeah, it brought to mind for me a very Tim Burton-esque character, with tall, lank, gangly, but then the earlobes and the piercings kind of gave me more of a tribal thought. So I'm not sure exactly how I would describe him, but I think that's kind of as close as my brain could get.
And so the horses take the carriage, and they're going to this town nearby where we know that the fake Lord Renu is hanging out. And they have that's when Kelsier thinks that she's a brave one because Gemmel had to push him off the wall the first time. And then they have the discussion that starts out really weird to me, where Vin's just like, so he's older than your brother's older than you, huh? How often did he beat you? And it's like, that's just polite conversation for Vin. It's like, oh yeah, so you got an older brother. How much of a beating did he give you?
And it's like this seems to be the first time that really just twigs to Kelsier. It's like, God, you really have had a shit life.
Yeah. Also, this isn't normal. People's siblings don't just go around beating you. That's not a normal thing.
I like when she's like, oh, he never beat you, huh? Oh, so how did you escape his beatings? He's like, no, he never tried to beat me. That never happened.
Your little brother, Joe, did you get beat on a lot?
Not a lot. Some, sure. It was usually not me having to run away. It was usually a parent intervention, but obviously she didn't have that, so.
Oh, now everyone's sad. So, and then we find out some interesting stuff about Kelsier's background, because his mother was basically got away with pretending to be a nobleman or noblewoman, so that him and his brother grew up as like illegitimate but privileged noble children until someone discovered the truth.
Which, like, man, like their mother must have had that con going for years. Like,
yep.
How does she maintain it, and what the hell brought the truth out?
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, if she got away with it for so many years, at what point was it like, I figured this out? Like, how does that happen?
It explains a lot about Kelsier and how much he knows as well, and how he behaves. Like, so not only, he's Scar, but he's lived a totally different life to most Scar. Mm-hmm. And the skills like that he's learnt and what he knows about noble behavior makes him different. He's got an understanding of how they work, which is definitely going to be an asset.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that, but it's like he knows noble society well enough to probably be better than your average person at trying to bring them down. Vin's like, what's going to stop me from running away from you? And he's like, nothing, because you are free to go where you want. And then he gives her all the money that she helped scam and says that she can leave, whenever she wants. He'll teach her the last 2 medals, and she can go on her way if that's what she wants. And she's just still suspicious, like he's trying to trick her in some way. And then she brings up what she knows, or should know, is going to be a sensitive subject for him, because he's like, there's no betrayals in my crew. And she's like, except one, the one that sent you to the pits. And he's kind of like, that takes him by surprise a bit.
I think that's her, like every interaction they have, Kelsier has control of the conversation. He's the one continually wrong-footing her. This is the one time she catches him out, and I think she might have done that specifically to just for that one fleeting moment. Like, I'm the one saying uncomfortable things to you. Let's see how you take it. Like, maybe not with any sense of malice, but just so she has some sort of like just that little touch of control in their relationship.
Yeah, I can see that. Makes sense. Because she really didn't have any control in her entire life at this point.
No.
And Kelsier does not want to talk about the traitor thing.
It sounds as though, like, he knows there is a traitor, but he doesn't want to think about it at all. Like, it seems really sensitive. So I have a bit of a theory about that. But, yeah, I'll hold on to that when we get to the theory portion of the episode.
Okay. Everyone's holding their stuff for predictions now.
I also have a theory on that.
Do you want to share?
Too.
Oh. Okay.
Hey, man, you set the format.
It's not a theory portion at the end. It's a predictions portion. It's completely different.
Okay.
Oh.
As far as everyone knows. Okay. And then he gets to the point where he's just like, okay, she's not going to trust him at all. Turn around and says, we're going back. And we kind of discussed this already, too. Like, was an important moment for them to just work this out. Like, are you on the team or are you not on the team? You can't be halfway on this team. And eventually she says she's going to stay, but not because she trusts him, because she wants to see what happens.
It doesn't really resolve anything. She still doesn't trust him.
I don't know.
Whether she doesn't really trust him or if it's, she's just going to say, look, I don't trust you, because she doesn't want him to have that. I think she is starting to trust him, but if he knows that she trusts him, then she loses that edge.
That's the way I read it. Yeah, she wouldn't stay if she didn't have some trust in him, but she can't let him know. She can't let him win the conversation. So we get we get a description of Felice, or Felice, sure, that's what I'm going to call it, as being like this rich town. It's like the fancy suburb where the rich people actually spend time in their nice sprawling mansions instead of the gross city with all the ska packed in there. Also, the giant keeps they have there. I feel like it's one of those situations where you're like, this castle gets really drafty. I don't know why I think that. It's probably nothing like that, but that's just the quote that I have in my head. It's like, the castle gets really drafty in the winter. We need a nice manor.
I feel like most castles get drafty in winter, right? Because it's a castle, you can't really like make it cozy.
I don't know, get put some windows in, get some shag carpeting. It's very, very 60s. It's great.
Shag.
I don't know why it has to be shag, but
It's just a funny word.
it is. See, there you go. That's good enough. And then Kelsier's frowning at the city, and she's like, "You disapprove of the waste?" And he's like, "Well, kind of, but not really. I was just thinking that it should be beautiful." And she's like, "Oh, it is beautiful." It's like, "No, the homes are all stained. The trees grow leaves of brown." And she's like, what do you mean? Like, what color should they be?" And he says green, and she's like, "That's weird. It's like having purple trees or something. Why would they be green?"
Yeah. Blue sky. What the hell are you on?
But I also like that she writes it off. She's like, "I guess anyone who escaped from the pits of Hathsin, it's bound to be kind of weird, so it's fine."
This struck me. I'm just like, after all the shit you've been through with this guy and thinking he's really odd, now you start to think that? Like, he basically pitched you off a wall earlier.
I think it's a sign of her like starting to accept these people and her place here, that she's going to start treating them more like people at this point and thinking about them that way and not like the temporary obstacle she has to overcome.
Well, and up until this point, she's been thinking that like they've been purposely misleading her or lying to her, and now I think she's finally realizing, no, they really want to do all this stuff they're talking about. They're not trying to con me. They're just weird people.
Let's see. He tells her she needs to burn the metal away in her stomach at the end of the night because it can be poisonous if it's digested, some of it. Which I think is something else we touched on when Dak was like, maybe this world just doesn't work like ours because some of this would be bad for you to have in your body.
Yep. No, it turns out, once again, it's like, no, just like the real world. That shit's going to kill you.
Yeah. And then I think I mentioned this last time because I thought it was part of the previous discussion about burning like alloys that aren't quite right, but it didn't come up until here, that if you try to burn a metal that is not one of the 10, it could kill you. And
don't chew on uranium, kids.
That's got to make him hesitant to be trying out the 11th metal all willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Point.
Just testing them to see which one is the 11th metal. Just hope for the...
Yeah, like, how does somebody figure that out without a lot of people dying first?
You imagine it's like a wine tasting, instead of like all these different wine glasses, they bring out these little slivers of metal.
It's a heck of a party. Okay. They make it to the mansion. It's a super nice mansion. They get out of the carriage. Vin doesn't even want to walk inside because she's like, it's so clean. And we find out that Renu is an extremely good actor.
No, just like the fact that it's so clean. It's like, wow, how hard are these people working to keep this place?
Yeah.
Like, but they seem satisfied in doing so.
Well, and of course, Kelsier was spreading rumors that Renu was thinking about paying his ska. So for all we know, that it could be it. They're just paying the ska. And they're like, you know what? I'm much happier sweeping all this ash and keeping everything clean now that I get paid for it. So what do you guys think of Renu now that we meet him?
I mean, he seems to be what Kelsier says here. Like when he was describing him, I think in the prologue, you know, he seems to be this nice guy, treating people with respect. You know, so I think, yeah, he's definitely going to be able to pull off what Kelsier says about him. But I think there's so much to learn about this guy. Yeah, I'd love to know what he actually is. I mean, we already know that he's not the real person. He is an imposter. So, and what he did, the big secret, what he did to become Lord Reno is, yeah, I would think it's interesting. Yeah.
He doesn't like to talk about it in front of people, apparently. And we get to know Sazed a little better, and I'm curious what you guys are thinking about this guy who, his whole conversation with Vin I find very interesting here, especially his sarcastic response where she's like, "Can you please not stand behind me?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, sure." Just takes a couple steps so he's standing right next to her and still being awkward.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think he's a real fun character, and kind of it's just like the fact that he's a servant, or I guess in service, but that he so loves what he does and he's so well respected for what he does. It's just a really cool dynamic, I think, for a character like him.
Yeah.
He just seems really unflappable. It's like in the next chapter when Vin's talking to him and shoots down another religion that he sold, and he's like, "Oh well, next one." It's like, "How many do you have?" "Oh, I got like 500 of them. I'll find one for you eventually."
I don't think I've ever seen a character like shopping religions for people before in anything I've ever read. So it's a very unique trait, I feel like, to this.
Yeah, because he's basically, in essence, saying there's no wrong religion. It's whatever whatever you believe in is the right thing for you. It's a very different take on like what religion should be for people.
I guess when you live in the society with only one religion allowed and it's worshiping the Lord Ruler, then it's kind of anything is better than that.
Yeah, but he just seems really dedicated to what he's doing, but he also partly because that's what he believes in, and also partly because he genuinely enjoys it. So, yeah, I like him.
Sazed is a cool guy. Vin very quickly figures out that he is very in the know about what's going on because she's nervous at first. She's like, I was just wondering how you got here. He's like, what, you mean how a Terrismen steward ended up as part of a rebellion to overthrow the final empire? Like, oh, okay, I guess, good. We're all on the same page. That's nice. And they have a discussion about belief, and Vin's almost trying not to participate in the discussion because she's like, where is this going? He's like, do you believe in the final empire? She's like, well, I believe that it's strong, immortal. Well, I mean, it has been so far, I guess. And the Lord Ruler, is he the ascended avatar of God? Do you believe that he is the sliver of infinity? She's like, I don't know, man. I haven't really thought about it. He's
I
like,
never
maybe
really
you should think about it.
And it's like, I don't talk religion in the workplace.
Yeah. Hey, man, respect my space on religion.
She doesn't really have a space on religion. She's just like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I get the feelings like even if she was like a believer in something and, you know, one of those, like, and she was like, that's my belief, like the other beliefs are stupid, he'd probably just go, well, you know what, you have a belief in something, and that's cool. I'll happily talk theology with you on that.
And then we move into the reasons why Vin cannot be the heir of Lord Renew in this play act. And really, this is just, as soon as they lay the plan down, Dak's like, well, when they lay a plan out like that, it means that it's not going to work like it's supposed to. And this is just the very first speed bump, like the same night that they've had this discussion. It's like, oh, by the way, that's not going to work.
Yep.
There's no way that she could do that. She would be like, her hand would instantly become one of the most sought after in all of Luthadel.
Yeah,
it's like which seems Vin doesn't do so well with attention to start with.
Exactly. Yeah, right? It seems like that'd be rough for her. Although the plan they formulate is searching for somebody to marry her anyway. So I don't know really what their game plan is. I guess that's the guys, but really she's hoping nobody wants to. They're hoping nobody wants to be with her. So it's just kind of weird.
The plausibility of the plan, when they're talking about it before, is that she's the heir. And that's the reason for being there. And they're like, well, that won't work. Like, it's not that her being there won't work. It'll be that just it's not plausible for her to be the heir when there are so many other people. Like, that's just so far from what could possibly happen. It won't work. But, like, a distant niece introduced to court, that's plausible. So she'll still get attention, but also not being the heir means she won't get as much attention as what she would have got before. So I guess it's just refining the details more than anything. Like, there's still a lot of the plan will still work. It's just how they go about it in what role.
It's true. And, I mean, really, her whole point there is to kind of spy and listen to the court gossip. And so, like, well, she can't be getting too much attention or she won't hear all the good stuff if everyone's always trying to get married to her, basically. So being kind of ignored is what we want, is kind of what they land on here. But, yeah, so it just shows you that we're going to be hitting speed bumps already, although maybe the 2 months time skip, it all goes off without a hitch, right? I'm totally sure that happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they're like, well, she has no manners at all. No offense, Vin. And as she's sitting there stuffing bread into her pocket, she's like, well, why would I be offended? And so they're going to have My Fair Lady her.
Yeah. It almost would have been better if she had, like, her mouth full of bread and be like, why would I be offended? What do you mean?
No offense. No, not taken.
She could have a mouthful of bread and be hiding bread in her pocket. Why pick one?
I mean, we've already established that, like, with the stuff back at Clubs' shop, she stole the food and was just like, all right, that's going to go off first. I'm going to keep that. So it makes sense she would be stealing food to be like, gonna need that later.
But she's stealing food, but then when she goes to bed, she makes a point of saying that wait, hang on, I left food there. Whoa.
Yeah.
And it's a weird dichotomy for her because as she starts to eat the food, she's just nibbling at it because she's like, oh my gosh, I'm eating food that was prepared by other people. And then at the end of the meal, she's like, oh my gosh, I left food behind. So she doesn't quite get what she wants either, I think.
Whatever you give her, she doesn't trust it.
Yeah.
You give it to her, she doesn't trust it. You don't give it to her, she doesn't trust it. Like, it's...
Yeah.
Yeah. She's just going to question everything.
They're going to have Sazed become her steward. And Kelsier's like, I don't think he's really anybody's steward anymore, right? Hey? And he's like, a Terrisman without a master is like a soldier with no weapon. Which tells you something interesting about the Terrismen and how they see themselves.
But I'm just like, is that a culture indoctrination, or were they just conquered and then, like the Scarf, they were basically forced to think that way,
right?
Under penalty? Like, I don't know. That line may be a bit uncomfortable, if I'm being perfectly honest.
No, I can absolutely see that.
See, for me, it was like, I don't know. It just seemed like in their DNA, like, because, and it's because he's so outspoken against the Final Empire. I feel like that is what they do. Like, they are people who serve others, but at the same time they have a very strong sense of what is right and what is wrong in the world. So I kind of took it as like more of a noble thing, like, no, this is what we do.
It's kind of unclear at this point because this is the first Terrisman that we've met, although we have heard about one other Terrisman only, and it was the guy, the Packman from the Epigraph, who was apparently a huge jerk and just hateful and like spewing hate about people that he had never met and countries that he's never been to. So it seems very different from this one other Terrisman we've met, at least.
Well, we also have to remember the perspective of who we think that is writing those epigraphs. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it could also be a time difference. Like, we don't know when the epigraphs are written, so.
Right. But yeah, I can see how it would make you a little uncomfortable. This guy's like, no, we're like born slaves. We have to be a slave to someone.
But I think less that he said that, but more just like he did seem to take some pride in that. As like a Terrisman without a master is like a soldier without a weapon. It's like that. It is our reason to be. That's a bit different from the Scar saying this is how life is. It sucks, but it's what we got to do. It's like that's someone who was saying this is our situation and. Yeah, it's kind of that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, we'll have to see as Sazed develops further.
I mean, I could watch Sazed do stuff all day. Like, I think he's hilarious.
I love anyone who's sarcastic and not even he didn't have to say anything to be sarcastic. He's sarcastic in action, and it's amazing. So Lord Renew's like, please escort them to the guest quarters, and of course Kelsier's like, well, I bought the place. I know where the men's guest quarters are. I got it. And he apologized to Vin for excluding her, and we kind of skipped over that, but I like Vin gets offended that she's excluded from this thing, and then she gets angry at herself for being offended by it. She's like, I've never been in any other crew where the leader like had me in all of his plans. Why would I be upset now?
Yeah, I think she's like unknowingly kind of realizing, oh, I'm changing. This person is changing me because they're treating me like an equal, not like, someone that's beneath them or somebody who shouldn't be involved in the plan. And then she gets upset with herself for realizing like, oh, I'm changing and thinking I'm equal to this person. I don't like that. I need to be my old self. I need to be the unnoticeable person that I've always been to survive.
Change is always kind of scary, especially if you're like, don't even realize it's happening.
Yeah. And especially when, changes nearly get you killed in the past, which it has for her.
Mm-hmm. And then we end the chapter with Vin being like, Sazed, Kelsier, he's a good man, isn't he? And Sazed says that he is a very good man, one of the best I've known. And she's like, I don't think I've ever known one of those before. What do you guys think? Is Kelsier a good man?
Ultimately, yes.
Yeah, I think the conversation with his brother has proved that he may not have always had good, like the motives of a good man or the actions of a good man, but the changes that have gone through him have shaped him into somebody that wants to be a good man and wants to do what's right.
Yeah, I think he's good.
Okay. And we move into part 2. Remember part 1 was called The Survivor of Hathsin. So it's kind of like, I guess, Kelsier's part in that or named after him at least. And now we move into Rebels Beneath a Sky of Ash. And a very short epigraph, like Dag mentioned. In the end, I worry that my arrogance shall destroy us all. And we open up with a fight out in the mists, or kind of a fight.
Sorry, just before we get to that,
yeah?
Just a thought I had, and this could be nothing, and may not even need to comment on it, but I thought the fact that we moved into a different section now, like part two, now we moved into part 2, I'm just like, are the are the epigraphs still being written by the same person, or is this one written by someone different? Because like that line seemed very, is this what Kelsey is thinking to himself?
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
That's a good point.
Or it could be it's all written by the same person. Turns out it is Kelsey, but who knows?
I don't want to say too much. I will say that is an excellent instinct that you have, and whether or not it's right in this circumstance, you should hold on to that.
Okay, cryptic.
But yeah, that's I like that you're thinking that deeply about it. It bodes well.
Okay.
Ooh, common thread. Things are happening.
So we won't go into all the details of the fight scene either, except for I want to touch on a couple pieces of it. But what did you guys think of this first actual allomancy kind of fight?
I thought it was really cool. Like it was like there was a lot going on. You could see how all the powers work. It didn't seem to be as clunky, I guess, because they didn't need to explain how the powers worked in the middle of the fight. Like we know enough. It basically says, "Oh, I flared this," and we get okay, cool, we know what that does now. So yeah, it was a bit more fast paced. And we're seeing it from the perspective of someone who winds up losing the fight, rather than someone who effectively dominates most of it. So that was that was fairly cool, and it was nice to see what people can do to each other with allomancy, rather than against people who can't use it at all.
I thought it was good to see a bit of Vin's growth. Like obviously 2 months have passed. It's not a huge amount of time, but compared to the amount of time we've already known Vin for, I guess that there's a lot that would change. But to see her development and skill that she's learnt, but also that she was able to sort of deceive Kelsier as well, sort of just showing how she's thinking about things, and she's sort of not afraid to do something like that now. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, just seeing the two of them sort of go head to head, I thought it was quite cool.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to touch on was her little trick of shooting her bag of coins into the air, because out in the mist, they're not actually seeing each other most of the time. What they're seeing is these lines that are pointing at each other. And so she uses that to her advantage and kind of catches him off guard a little bit. Not that it lets her win, but it comes close. And then they get into the pushing match at the end, where she drops her daggers and they're each pushing on the coin, and the coin's in midair between them, and she's thrown back into a tree to help support her weight. Which I like that whole moment. I think it's a very cool moment.
It comes up in Dragon Ball Z or Harry Potter, where you got the two opponents and they're both firing stuff at each other, and there's the thing in the middle and they're trying to force it one way to each other. That sort of reminded me of that. It's that's a cool little spin on that.
Yeah.
Trope.
Yeah, force struggle, basically.
Yeah, basically.
And at the end, he kind of, after Kelsier wins, which Kelsier seems to win because her tree breaks that's holding her up and she falls down. But he tells her, you might want to avoid getting in push matches with people who weigh more than you, which means everybody because you're tiny. And she thinks to herself, it's really smart. I shouldn't be fighting people head on. I should be fighting more like the way I've always done, where you're sneaky and you're small and whatever. But he gives her the squished, flattened and bent coin that they pushed between them so hard that it crushed it. I thought that was cool. And I mentioned to you guys that I had coins from the Mistborn Kickstarter. They're like, what else can we put in this Kickstarter? And a bunch of us suggested, it's hey, you could have a squished version of the coin, from this scene. And so they totally included that.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah, that is really cool.
Send us all photos of these coins. I'd be curious to see them.
Oh yeah, totally. I could actually probably put one in the chat right now as we start talking about this next part. Let's see. So I like that she talks in the previous chapter and in this chapter about how Kamen was good at playing the nobleman because he was just such a jerk and so loud, but that Lord Renu has just this air where it's this guy is noble. That's how good an actor Kelsier has gotten. And then they move into the scene where Vin gets a haircut that she doesn't particularly want, but she's not really given a choice. Over 2 months, I guess it's grown long enough that they're hey, this you might look like a girl now.
And her barber, her hairdresser, is not thrilled.
They got an on-staff hairdresser at this manor. And she's like, tisk, can you take better care of this hair?
She's like, I can't perform miracles. I'm like, oh, okay.
And Kelsier shows up and kind of takes this as, I'm sorry, we skipped over Say's trying to sell her on another religion, which apparently he's done a couple of times now. What did you guys think of the description of this religion?
I'm a bit of a sucker for reading about various mythologies and how they, the things they worship and whatnot. And this one sounded really interesting to me. I'm just like, oh, like we only get a brief mention of it, but I'm just like, okay, I can totally see why they would think this versus this, like the difference between the sun and the stars and the two gods. I'm like, all right, this sounds pretty cool. And it's fitting for people who worship the night over the day. I'm like, all right, that actually does sound really interesting. I'd like to know more. And Vin's like, nah, I'm good. And it's like, god damn it.
I thought it was really interesting that they were talking about the sun and the stars when, this must be one of those really old religions that doesn't really exist much anymore, because people aren't seeing the stars through the mists, and they're not seeing the sun like it was because of the ash clouds. And, it's probably something that she doesn't really identify with because she can't see these things.
If he talked about this religion before she had that night out with Kelsey, or she didn't even know what stars were at that point. So it definitely a big difference. And apparently that's the 5th religion he's tried to convert her to, and he knows of 562 and has all of them memorized. So that in and of itself is pretty impressive.
I really like this passage just because this is where Say's, like, everyone has something that they're passionate about, and this is Say's very calmly. She's just sitting there having a haircut. It's not really the right, what people you would call the right moment for introspection, but like he's talking about this, and like you can tell he's fairly calm about it, but he's very passionate about this, and he's like, this is our purpose. This is what we need to do for the good of everyone in the world. So I have to do this, and I was like, whoa, this seems a bit deep for this moment, but in that instant you get just how driven and how determined Sayst is to do what he needs to do. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, that is a lot of commitment. Like, he has clearly put a whole lot of work into what he does.
Yeah.
And then she realizes for the first time that all of these religions are dead because the Lord Ruler allows only one religion. And she's even more shocked. She's like, wait a second, you're trying to convert me to a religion that doesn't even really exist anymore?
I took that as, like, you're trying to get me to believe in religions that have been dead for 1,000 years, but like the flip side of that is you're trying to get me to believe in religions that are illegal, that you can get killed for worship. You can get killed for worshiping these faiths, and it's just like, yeah, but you're already planning to topple the empire. Are you still worried about that? So I think that's just another hang up of her being concerned with survival.
Yeah, I can see that. Because you're right. He's told her that, like, this is an illegal thing that you're not allowed to do.
Yeah.
But that's her whole life, is doing illegal things that she's not allowed to do, I think.
Yeah, true.
Let's see. And so he's like, one day, the final empire will be gone, and people will want to know what their ancestors believed. And the keepers will be here to return to mankind his forgotten truths. So this is the first mention we get of keepers, but it comes up again at the end of the chapter.
And as we all know, in this universe, keepers guard goalposts through which a red ball might soar through in order to win the Quidditch match, right?
Yeah, pretty sure it's the same universe.
Makes total sense.
She lists off all the great houses for us, which you don't need to remember, and it's probably completely irrelevant unless you play the board game, in which you play one of the great houses of Luthadel. Let's see. Major.
Does the board game contain spoilers for us?
Yeah.
No, yeah, you wouldn't want to actually play the board game right now, but and I won't even. In fact, even just the title is kind of a spoiler, so we're not gonna get into it anymore. Probably shouldn't have mentioned it. Anyway.
Yeah, way to go.
Yeah, I know. I was about to tell you the name. I'm like, you know what? I can't even say the name of it really without minor spoilers. So let's just move on.
Yeah.
It's that board game. Oh, by the way, I did drop into our chat a link to a picture of the currency, and I'm going to do a second one here in a second to show you the flattened version.
Because visuals are always good on an auditory podcast.
Right. Well, they can hear your reactions to the visuals. But they're both made by Shire Post Mint and are available for purchase currently in case anyone wants to go and buy coins.
Oh, you're dropping him into the Skype chat. I don't know if I can pull those up on the Xbox.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Well, I mean, I guess you could always post it to the website, couldn't you? If you wanted people to see it.
We could put it up on the Facebook or something. Yeah, I might do that actually. Probably not on the Podbean website.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might post some of the images on the Facebook. I don't think I could do it on the Podbean website unless I wanted to use it as the image for the episode, which I wouldn't do because the images for each episode are specifically chosen for reasons. Anyway.
Presumably later we will find out those reasons.
Well, I guess it never really comes up, so it wouldn't be basically. And if you look at the picture of actually the currency at some point, I know Dak can't right now, but if you do, you will see that there are symbols, and it's what in universe is called the steel alphabet, the alphabet that they write and things in. And the symbols represent different metals, but they also represent letters, and they also represent numbers. And so the episodes are numbered with the correct number in the steel alphabet for that episode.
Oh.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Interesting.
Let's see. She talks about the great 10. There's 10 great houses, and she goes off on a little autobiography of Lady Valette Renew, who's the character that she is playing. I don't know if it counts as an autobiography if the person doesn't actually exist, but I'm going to call it that for lack of a better word.
Personal history.
Anybody else when they read Venture think of Venture Brothers? Huh? House Venture?
No.
Can't say no.
But I mean, Kelsey already attacked House Venture once. You've read about House Venture before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, the first thought that popped through my head was like 10 great houses, 10 medals. Coincidence? More than likely.
That's a good point, Dak. Maybe each of them is like specialized in one type of metal. That might have something to it.
Well, not if the 10th medal is Atium and the Lord Ruler keeps that for himself.
Good point.
Yeah. I think we established earlier on that the way you become a great house is to have enough money to like build a giant palace, a keep is what they call it, in Luthadel. So I think anybody who's rich enough and ballsy enough to go and build a giant thing can be considered a great house.
Well, didn't they say that Lord Reno is possibly going to be joining the great houses or something?
Exactly. Like his cover is that like he wants to do enough business to within the next 10 years become a great house.
Yeah.
But the people who were given the power of Allomancy were in favor with the Lord Ruler, so it's not necessarily that a great house gets that power.
Yeah.
It's the original great houses, I guess, got that power.
Well, yeah, supposedly all of the noblemen are descended from like those original, the people who stayed loyal to the Lord Ruler or whatever, so that's why they get to be noblemen and not slaves.
True.
Okay, she's talking about how good Vin is at memorizing stuff, and he's like, maybe if you spent less energy trying to avoid our lessons. And then she's like, do all humble attendants give their masters as much lip as you? And he's like, only to the successful ones, which is a great line. And so her hair ends up looking nice. She looks like, I like the way it's written. It's like she looked ... like a girl. And then
like
Kelsey
she's finally ignoring Reen's voice.
Yeah, this is like the first time that she wants to ignore Reen's voice. And even in the annotations, he mentions that. He's like, he feels this is a significant moment for her, the first time that she wants to ignore this voice in her head.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's see. And then Kelsey comes back, talks about how she likes making faces. She likes to scowl. And then he and Says take the opportunity while Vin is locked in a chair being haircut to go off and have a little discussion about her. And Says is like, she's like super smart. She tries to avoid our lessons. And Kelsey's like, yeah, I think that's, kind of her way of maintaining control over her life because she doesn't actually have any. And they discuss that she's like getting better at impersonating a noblewoman, but still doesn't seem, ready for the big leagues, I guess.
Which seems fairly realistic. It's like you can take someone to all the practice dinners you want. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will succeed, especially under pressure.
Oh, yeah. And there's going to be a lot of pressure. We find out at the end of the chapter. She's going to the ball at the ball. I said Vol like an idiot. The ball at Keep Venture at the end of the week.
There's enough V's in that sentence, venture and Vin. So
Yeah. When she gets there, she's gonna meet 2 ventures, and one will be Hank and one will be Dean. And you guys don't like my Venture Brothers reference.
I love
I've
Venture
never
Brothers.
watched it.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Venture Brothers is a great show. You should absolutely check it out sometime. Totally
It's been on my
irrelevant
list
to
for
what we're doing.
years.
Well, see, what better time than when you're locked up to start crossing things off your list?
Because we're not locked up, we still have to work at our respective workplaces.
That's a fair point. So do I, and so does Joe. So I kind of, although I get to do it from home. So, but
yeah,
it's not like I can sit here watching movies while I'm working. So
yeah,
they talk about how she's really good at stuff. Even at Alamancy, she's surprisingly good. She's only been doing this for a couple of months, and she's already given me a run for my money out in the streets.
She's a bit of a prodigy.
Yeah, she's an Alamancy prodigy.
We're also measuring this against Kelsier's assessment of himself.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, yeah, like you're really only you've only got your own experiences to measure on. He's like, the variance isn't this great. It took me months and months to learn how to do this. I'm just like, maybe it could be she's really, really good, or maybe you're just not as good as you think you are. Not necessarily saying Kelsey is bad, but he might not be a master.
Well, he's not going to admit that he's not naturally good at stuff. It's like, she must just be really amazing because she's better than me, and I'm Kelsier. I'm awesome, right? So
yeah.
He says that he's feeling guilty because she hasn't had much of a chance to learn, and she'll probably end up executed with everybody else. And so he's like, well, yeah, but that's not going to stop you from using her, right? And he says, no, it's not going to. But Say suggests that he take her or kind of loan her out to some of the other crew members so that they can practice, or she can practice with their metals, specifically mentioning Breeze. It's like, I hear that Breeze guy is really good. You should let her hang out with him for a bit, which is totally something that I think you guys predicted would be happening, more or less. So that's looking good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like all those guys need their day in the limelight.
Uh-huh. And we end the chapter by him talking about Say's is going to accompany her to all of the functions as, her steward and guardian, because you don't send a young girl to all these parties with a bunch of people she's never met by herself. That makes a lot of sense.
That's when it totally twigged that Say's is just the Alfred to Vin's Batman.
I know, right? He's totally an Alfred.
Yep.
Although he also says that he's going to protect her. And he promises to protect her with his life. And Kelsier says, I feel pity for the man who gets in your way. And specifically thinks to himself that few men, Alamancers or not, would fare well in a fight with a keeper whose anger had been roused. So that's a big hint that the author just threw out in front of us to be like, hey, there's something going on here with this guy.
I was going to say, like, that's got to mean he's got some abilities or some sort of power of his own.
Yeah, it sounds like he can do something, but it specifically excludes Alamancy. He's like, few men, Alamancers or not, would fare well against him. So it's like, this guy's in some way really strong, but it's not related to the magic that we've been learning about this whole book.
I pity the fool that gets in his way.
Oh, that was unexpected.
That was brilliant.
Yep. On that note, Mr. T, you just take us out of the chapter here. Now we were talking about doing like the ending stuff in character, and now it's gonna be like, you need to do a Mr. T ending to the show.
Yeah.
But that is the end of the chapter. Anybody have any thoughts you want to put out here now that we've made it to the end of these two?
I think things are heating up. I think we're really gonna start getting into the thick of the things pretty soon. I mean, I feel like we already have, but I think each time Vin is going to be introduced to something new with the Alamancy, she's just going to get better and better. And I like espionage spy type stuff. I feel like he's mixing a lot of genres here, which is not a bad thing. So I'm excited to get to see her kind of in the atmosphere with these noble people and see how she can kind of put her skills to the test.
You think she's going to do well?
I don't know. I think maybe at first she'll be a little nervous, but especially if she goes and hangs out with Breeze beforehand, I think she'll be pretty good at it.
Okay.
I'm a little bit worried that she's going to be a little bit cocky with her abilities. Like she is talented, you know, she's learning more about what she can do and more about allomancy in general. And I mean, she's going to be building her confidence, which is great. But at the same time, I think she may get a bit carried away, and I think she could be a problem down the line.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like because she is getting a lot better with her powers and she knows it, she's going to rely on them for situations that shouldn't need them. It's like, you hear all those stories, like all those jokes about how people say, oh, if I was a Jedi and I had the Force, I would use it to open the fridge and float myself a drink. People like who like have these powers and then they would over rely on them and use them for things they are not meant to be used for. And when I feel like Vin would sort of get like, oh, I can do all this stuff now. Like, I don't need to worry about other stuff because I can do this, and that's going to get her into trouble. She's going to rely too much on her abilities.
I mean, she's good at memorizing the lessons, but is she really absorbing what they are? Like, she can spout the information back, but how is she going to go in a real application of this? Which I know is their concern as well. But, you know, how much of this is she actually absorbing, and what decisions will she make in certain situations? And I think I don't think it's going to go particularly well. Maybe not the first time she goes in with these people, but I think, you know, as she's sort of mixed amongst the nobility a little bit longer, I think she's going to think she's pretty good.
Overconfidence. Okay. I mean, I gotta say, these powers would leave me feeling pretty freaking invincible, especially Pewter, like, she's jumping off buildings and landing without a problem and stuff, and getting hit and not, you know, feeling any pain from it because Pewter makes your body stronger. That would make me feel pretty confident. So I could totally see that.
Pretty confident, but we're also learning that, you know, there's always consequences to these powers, and, you know, if you don't do them properly, things are going to go wrong. And I think that message is going to translate to non-allomancy related things as well.
It's just life, consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Gotta hate them.
Equal and opposite reaction and all that jazz.
Okay, let's move into predictions, because you guys have just been hoarding them up the whole episode. So what do you got? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I predict that I don't know if it's a prediction. Theory. Theory prediction. I know, going against what we're supposed to do. I think that the betrayer to Kelsier was his wife.
Damn, you beat me to it.
I know, that's why I wanted to go first. When you were like, I have a theory on this, I was like, damn you, I bet you've got the same theory I do.
Okay. We did not discuss this beforehand.
No, we actually didn't. That's why he's so guarded about it, and the discussion that he had with Marsh about, even like, despite what she did, you know, we loved her and missed her, and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Maybe Kelsey is going to have problems with letting people get that close to him. I think there's still a lot of Kelsier that's going to be really guarded. He gives that happy, confident air to him, but I think he's got his own issues that potentially could cause problems as well.
Yeah.
I still don't think
another level to. Sorry, just to carry on from that. It adds another level to the bit before he attacked Venture's manor, where he's standing on the rooftop and thinking to himself, she should be here with me, but she's not. Like that. Like, originally it's just because she died in the pits, but with this idea behind it, it's like, oh, this is a bit darker because, like, she'd be here if she hadn't done whatever she did.
Yeah, I mean, based on the conversation with Marsh and Kelsier's hesitance there, that I agree, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the only thing that kind of calls it into question is, well, she apparently did end up in the pits also. So if she betrayed her husband for some reason, she didn't get anything out of it that we can tell.
Well, maybe
but
that's
depending
why
on what it was.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, if she got thrown into the pits with him, like, and died there, maybe that's why he's less, like, he's not exactly open about, yeah, she betrayed me and she did this to me. If she got off scot-free, maybe he would hate her, but because she was in there with him, maybe and then died there, he's just like, she didn't get anything out of her betrayal, so he's just bitter about it rather than angry, which is a big difference.
But maybe that betrayal as well was, you know, she had the best of intentions for it. You know, maybe it was something that was supposed to protect him and it didn't. It backfired, and that's how they ended up in that situation. Possibly. Maybe that wasn't the intention to begin with.
Okay. Interesting. Did you have any other predictions, Dax, since she stole yours?
Sorry.
No, that was my big one, but that's okay.
Okay, what do you got, Joe?
Well, I'm shocked. I'm utterly shocked. No, I'm not that shocked. It's
just partially shocked, not utterly.
Right. Yeah.
Moderately.
Yes, moderately shocked. No, that's a really cool prediction. I wish I had something that cool to predict. That's definitely not what I thought you guys were going to say, but that's awesome. I hope it ends up being true. For me, I think the only prediction that I had was that the Keepers, the Terrismen, they're going to be a much larger part of this than I think at this point in the book we know. I think there's something that the Keepers know, some knowledge that they have besides the religions, besides the way things were before the Lord Ruler took over, that's going to be of a lot of significance. So I'm really interested. I really like the Terrismen character we have in the book now, and I really hope that there is something a lot more going on with them.
Well, I mean, that makes sense with the epigraph previously talking about whoever was reading the epigraphs has gone there and had gone on some journey with Terrismen, so that would make sense.
So yeah, I'm excited to see if that goes somewhere.
Okay. Before we get into the end, wrapping everything up here, I wanted to read some stuff that we got, an email that we received at our email address, which is thesanderlanche@gmail.com. If you have questions or comments or suggestions, feel free to send them there. And we received an email from Angela, who says, "Hi, I just listened to the first episode of your podcast. I have been very bored in quarantine." Which, side note here, when I read that, I was like, "Oh, you listened to us because you were very bored." Thanks.
Yeah,
that's heartwarming.
Doesn't that make you feel good? Mm-hmm.
But no,
don't be hating on our first email.
These are separate thoughts. It's okay. Angela was super nice. She goes, "I just listened to the first episode. I've been very bored in quarantine, and I just read Mistborn for the first time. Finished this morning, so this distraction could not have come at a better time. My copy of Well of Ascension won't be here until next week, so thank you for providing some much-needed content to bridge the gap. Being separated from my normal reading friends has made me very eager for bookish conversation. Just wanted to offer a word of encouragement. Also, I'm super impressed with some of what y'all have picked up on thus far." And this is just after the first episode, so y'all were doing well right off the bat.
Cool.
She says, "I really hated the prologue when I read it, though looking back it does set the stage well. However, I didn't pick up on much for a couple more chapters. Wishing you the best. P.S. I won't send any spoilers, but I really hope you're pre-screening these emails for the newbies." To respond to that, I am the only one with access to the email account, so yes, they will all be pre-screened. So that was a nice email. Thank you, Angela.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you.
It'll be a couple weeks
Angela.
before you hear this because we're recording episode 5 before episode 4 has even come out. But hopefully you're hanging with us this long until episode 5. We also I've gotten a few messages that were very kind on Reddit where I posted. One of them was actually from a user named Eljawa, who requested that we do kind of more at the beginning of each episode, kind of more of a description of what happened during those chapters, so that people who maybe have read the book but not super recently would know kind of where we are as we discuss. So we tried that out at the beginning of this episode, and hopefully that is something we will keep doing, assuming it works okay. So that was helpful feedback. Feel free to send us any feedback you have. I'm not promising that we will take your suggestions, but I definitely listen to them. We want to put out a show that everyone is enjoying. And somebody else, let's see, Right Step Ricky said, "Hello there. I saw your post about the podcast, and I wanted you to know that I listened to the first episode and thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm just getting started reading Mistborn, and by extension the works of Sanderson, about halfway through Mistborn, and it is great to hear other people's take. I just wanted to reach out and let you know that the podcast is very enjoyable, and I can't wait to hear more of it." So thank you. That was very nice of you, Right Step Ricky. We appreciate positive thoughts. And, there was one more thing I wanted to point out, because a certain person has commented on all 3 of the episodes that have gone up so far. And so I wanted to give him or her a shout out. The username Salva on Podbean has commented on every episode saying, as he or she has listened to them, saying that they're good. On the third one, it just says, "Love it, as always." And then there's a second comment saying, "I'm from a Spanish-speaking country, so I can't tell my friends to listen. Sad face."
Aww.
I was like, "It's okay, buddy. You just keep listening and enjoying. That was my return comment. But
we're here for you, Salva.
Yeah. Joe even speaks Spanish pretty well. Better than me. But our mom was a native Spanish speaker, and I've always been a horrifying disappointment that I never picked up the language.
Yes. Yeah. Well, she didn't try very hard to teach us.
Well, she taught us all the curse words.
Sure.
Just through us hearing them all the time, so that was something. But
muchas gracias, Salva.
Thank you, everyone. And if anyone has, something they want to send, like I said, you can use the email address, thesanderlanche@gmail.com. You can leave comments on the episodes on Podbean. Please rate and leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, because that helps, raise visibility so that other people will check out the show. Any place that you want to talk about us, we got the Facebook page up, the Sanderlanche, that I may even, if we get a lot of interaction on there, might even set up a group, kind of a spoiler discussion group that the other three won't be able to see, but where people who listen to the show can talk about what we said each episode.
Oh, I see how it is.
Well, you can't be in the spoiler group. It would have spoilers.
Yeah. No, I understand.
That would be bad. Anyway, so thank you everybody for listening. Intro outro music by Miracle of Sound. Check him out. He's awesome. And lets us use his music because he's so cool and we love him. You guys have any final words for the audience before we sign off?
I've been reading the Reddit thread and a couple of people have commented, love how they've latched onto volcanoes. So yes,
that was
totally volcanoes.
I said the thing about the volcanoes, I think.
Yeah, but you responded to what someone else was saying, and I was like, whoa, we haven't brought that up this episode.
It's kind of
volcanoes.
Volcanoes.
Only the first episode where we talked about the volcanoes had come out when that person said that. They're like, I love the volcanoes thing. And I was like, oh, just wait till you get to episode 4 because we hit on volcanoes a whole bunch.
So, I'm going to hold on to that one no matter how wrong it is.
So, yeah, we're going to we got the volcano making metal, and maybe the 9th metal is going to be the anti-volcano metal. That's the working theory so far. You need one to start.
It's an ice metal.
Ooh, Iceman metal. I like it.
Yeah. Got a Shiva and an Ifrit for Final Fantasy fans everywhere.
Or just ice and fire materia. I mean, you don't have to go for summoning a whole... Anyway, no, we're not going to get into Final Fantasy. We're not going to do it this time.
No.
Thank you for listening, everybody. We will see you next week.
Bring up the brother in me. I'm searching for unity. Everything